All right.
Hi, Dimitri.
Hi, Myra. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, again. I hope everybody's having a nice Lent. We're almost halfway there. A few more weeks. As you know, again, we do appreciate your participation and your support in these stewardship monthly calls. We always start going through the definition of stewardship. By now, I think most of us, well, all of us should probably understand what it's all about, but basically, it is our grateful and loving response to God's love, grace, and gifts to us. It's our personal commitment to God and His church to make sure it remains vital and continues to grow by joyfully and sacrificially, of course, offering our talents, time, and treasure that we have received from Him, and probably like to add here, based on our discussion we had last year, in proportion. And finally, stewardship puts our faith into action and demonstrates our trust in God. So that's what stewardship is all about. With that, tonight we have, at least the program says, we have a special guest. Well, Father Jim Kordaris. Father Jim is special, but I wouldn't say he's a guest. He's one of us. He's been with us from the beginning of this exercise. He's been instrumental, and his help is of great value to us, and we much appreciate it in helping us and guiding us as we make these monthly calls. And for some of us, Father Jim has been of great help even prior to that, helping some of us with our stewardship efforts in our parishes. I'm sure probably you have read his bio, but in case you have not, I would just take a couple of minutes just to go over it. Father Jim currently is the Director of Stewardship, Outreach, and Evangelism for Archdiocese. He's a Midwesterner, born and raised in Minnesota, 10,000 lakes, and I'm sure he fished in maybe one or two of them, perhaps. Anyway, he was part of the St. Mary's parish in Minneapolis. He's, as a layperson, served in many roles and capacities, even as a parish council president. He received he has a BA in psychology and an MBA, and then he joined the financial services world, but his calling was different. So after getting a Master's of Divinity from Holy Cross, he was ordained to the diaconate in 1998 and priesthood in 1999. In 2003, he became the director. He was appointed director of the newly formed Department of Outreach and Evangelism for the Archdiocese. In 2009, he became the director of stewardship, because that's what that was added. Father Jim was the spiritual father for St. George in West 54th, downtown New York. And now, currently, he helps 100 or so families in Kingston, St. George in Kingston, New York, to grow spiritually. He's married. He has a teenage son. And tonight, Father Jim will speak to us about leading the parish, stewardship, and outreach in the Sunday Gospels of great length, a very appropriate topic for the period, for the time. Father Jim, please enlighten us.
Thank you, Dimitri. Thank you, Dimitri. And thank you, Dimitri, Myra, and Owen, and the team of Chicago for this ministry that you're carrying on, because it's really important that we get together on a regular basis to share what's working and to keep communication going. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We share best practices and find out what's going on around the Archdiocese and within the Metropolis. And in the near future, you'll be hearing from Melpo in Minneapolis, who actually just came on board in January with this department to deal specifically with planned giving, legacy giving in the parish, only for the parish. and only for the benefit of the parish. And she'll tell you more about it. But Metropolis, thanks for joining us tonight, and I look forward to that future session with you. As we look back on our service to the church, and I've had a lot of time to look back on it, I could see how all the things we've done before, at least that I was serving in before, served me in the role that I'm doing now. And I just want to share some of those things with you now. So I want to thank you for this opportunity to share thoughts on parish leadership, and then the importance of the role of the leadership that you have in your parish. And we all came to our roles in parish leadership in different ways. We may volunteer in a parish ministry, then eventually lead that ministry. We may initiate a new ministry. Oh, Myra, do you want to put up the slides?
Sure.
Then we'll go by the Sundays in a minute. We may volunteer in a parish ministry and then lead the ministry. We might initiate a new one and in that way become a ministry leader. And then a lot of us were invited to serve on the parish council, and we were elected by the parish to serve as leaders of the church. So it's important to see your parish not as it is now, but as it could be. As parish leaders, we're not brought into leadership to maintain the status quo. It is to realize the true potential.
Once again, I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty with the share again this
That's
evening.
okay. Take your time. I'll keep talking. Okay. So it's important to see your parish not as it is, but as it could be. That's what we are. And to push for change, positive change, because change in churches is very difficult. We always say that if you're cooking a stew, you have to turn the heat up enough to cook the carrots, but you don't want to burn it. You want to make sure that you're keeping the heat on, moving the church forward, encouraging positive growth without going too hard and too fast and upsetting people. But another leadership expert always says, he says, you have to have the people dislike you at a level that you can tolerate, because you're always pushing them out of their comfort zone to move forward. So as leaders, that's kind of our job. I love to listen to and read Peter Drucker of blessed memory. He did a lot of work with nonprofit organizations and churches, and he wrote a lot about leadership. And he said, there are very few born leaders. Very few born leaders. He said, for most of us, leadership is learned. And then he pointed out his 4 qualities of a leader. He says the definition of a leader is someone who has followers. There are many styles of leadership, but without followers, you're not a leader. Number 2, he said an effective leader is not someone who is loved or admired. He's someone whose followers do the right things. Whose followers do the right things. Popularity is not leadership. Results are leadership. Leaders are visible. Number 3, leaders are visible. They set examples. That's why as leaders in the parish, it's important for us not to be back in the office or off doing other things, but to be in liturgy, participating in the sacraments, letting people see us participate in the sacraments, because we're leading by example. And that's also true in stewardship. We lead by example as stewards of the church, showing people how to give sacrificially and generously. And number 4, he says leadership is not about rank or privileges or titles or money. Leadership is about responsibility. So we don't do it for our glory. We do it to serve. And we'll talk about that on the final Sunday, the 5th Sunday, when we talk about the 5th Sunday of Great Lent. This Sunday is the Sunday of the Cross, and that marks the halfway point in Great Lent. So it's already the 3rd Sunday of Great Lent, and there are 5 Sundays of Lent. So we're halfway through. And as parish leaders, we can do a lot to enhance the worship and the fellowship experience of those who walk through the doors of our parish. And so tonight I want to reflect on our ministry as leaders in light of the gospel readings of those 5 Sundays of Great Lent. Myra, could you go to the next slide?
Sure.
If you could click, Myra, on that lower right-hand side on the full screen, so it goes to full screen, that would be great.
Why isn't it doing this?
That's okay. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It's fine. So on the first Sunday of Great Lent, we read in the Gospel of John about the calling of the disciples. Philip finds Nathanael, and he says to him, we have found him whom Moses in the law and the prophets did write, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. And Nathanael says to him, can there any good thing come out of Nazareth? And Philip says, what does he say? Come and see. Come and see. Every one of us is called with those words to come and see. Greg, the theologian, he wrote, "You will never overcome God's generosity, even if you give away all that you have." And he goes on, "Nor will you give anything that is your own, because everything comes from God." So we're called to come and see what the church can become, not maintaining, but providing a vision for the future of the church. A Chicago priest of blessed memory, Father Bill Chiganis, he said, and I've quoted him many times, he said, "People don't give to need, they give to vision. People don't give to need, they give to vision. Church people don't stretch their giving," he said, "because of need to meet the budget. They give more because they're able to see a vision of people being reached and God's purposes being accomplished in the life of the church and its ministry." And so often we think the answer to increasing stewardship is to find creative ways to ask for more money. When we reach directly into the pockets of the people without first engaging them, though, in the life of the church, we're short-circuiting that whole process. Generous sacrificial giving is an important component of our spiritual growth and our spiritual maturity. Money follows mission. Money follows mission and not the other way around. Think about the Samaritan woman at the well, that story. Jesus, after meeting Jesus at the well, the woman leaves her water pot and goes back into the town. And she says to the man there, she says, "Come and see a man who told me all that I ever did. Is this not the Christ?" And the people all came out of the city and came to meet Jesus. We can be like that. God's going to place us in situations to welcome others to church. It may happen in your daily life. It may happen at the front door of your church as you welcome people to come and see. And that may be the most important missionary work you ever do, is when that person walks through the door, and that work has eternal consequences. I know we think for that person coming through the door, yes, but it has eternal consequences for us and how we handle that situation, because that's our responsibility when those people walk through our doors. Myra, could you go to the next slide, please?
Sure.
I love this story about the four friends. This gospel that we just read last Sunday, the second Sunday of Lent, we read about the people. A lot of people came to see Jesus in a house where he was. And there were four people who brought their friend, a paralyzed person, to be healed. So they brought him on a stretcher. And when they found the house was so crowded that they couldn't get close, they went up on the roof and removed parts of the roof and lowered their friend down on a stretcher and laid him at the feet of Jesus. I love that visual of laying a friend at the feet of Jesus. So just like those four friends, we begin by bringing ourselves to Christ, of course, but then it doesn't stop there. After we have brought ourselves, we bring other people. And that's the greatest gift we can give to someone else, is Jesus Christ. The ministries of the church and the worship service of Great Lent and Holy Week, they provide us this great opportunity to share the most beautiful parts of our church and the service of our church. And it's a huge opportunity for us to welcome people and share this beauty that we have. There's research that's shown that people really want three things from church. One, they want to feel the presence of God. Lent and Holy Week is a great time for this, because we as Orthodox, we have beautiful services, and they're we worship with all five senses, and people feel really lifted up with the iconography and the architecture and the incense and the prayers. It's all the senses, and we really feel the presence of God in our worship. And Holy Week is a really good time to bring people to church to sense that, especially Holy Friday and Holy Saturday. The second thing people want when they come to church is to serve their fellow man, whether it's feeding the hungry, collecting clothing for the local shelter, or any service project. People want to do this work in the context of their local church. So presence of God, serve their fellow man. And the third thing they want is opportunities for meaningful fellowship. Our New Testament professor, Holy Cross, would always tell us, he'd say, in the New Testament, bread is never just bread. And then he'd go on and on about that. But I say now in the parish, coffee isn't just coffee. To allow people to leave without an opportunity to fellowship after liturgy is to fail in facilitating those meaningful relationships between our people. If they just scatter after liturgy, we're missing a huge opportunity to bring people together. And what you serve doesn't matter. It can be cookies, it can be bread, it can be nothing. As long as there's coffee and a place for people to sit and fellowship, they will do so, and it will create relationships. And those relationships, when people start meeting off-site and creating friendships, the family that is your church really begins to grow and become a true family. So the leaders of Jesus' army are you. You are faithful men and women. You live ordinary lives in the world. You attend school or make a living or jobs and raise families, participate in the daily life of society. You're the ones who will reach people that we as clergy may never see. Relatives, friends, co-workers, maybe in athletics or clubs or organizations. You're going to be placed in situations where you're going to witness to your faith. Not by standing up and preaching or holding up a Bible or anything like that, but just by the way you conduct yourself as an Orthodox Christian. People will know that you're an Orthodox Christian eventually, and they will say, they'll sense the peace that is within you, and you'll be able to share your faith by who you are. Just like those 4 friends that laid their disabled friend at the feet of Jesus, we can do the same thing every time we open the doors of the church. We welcome those people that come through the doors, and then they find peace and meaning in their lives through our liturgy and our faith that we offer. That's why St. John Chrysostom, he called the church a hospital where people come to wash away their sins. And, I always visualize the church like an army field hospital where clergy and the staff work behind the lines, providing spiritual nourishment and a place to be healed and refreshed in the faith. People come through the doors of the parish every week, and they're tired and they're wounded and they're empty from their daily lives. They're worn out. They're doing their best to be faithful in a world that really doesn't really encourage or reward Christian values. But we bring people back to church, and we need to bring them back. People don't decide one day to stop going. Some do. Some people say, I'm not going to church anymore because of one thing. And they'll know it 20 years later when they still haven't gone to church. They'll tell you what that one thing is. But most people just drift away. They miss a Sunday, then another Sunday, and the Sundays pass. And then it becomes difficult to come back. And during COVID, people got used to not coming to church, and they filled their Sunday mornings with other things. And they may even have stopped it. They don't even realize they missed church. But the most effective people to bring a person back to church, do you know who that is? It's not your priest, it's the family. And do you know why people come back to church? Because they're asked. Pretty complicated, right? Family, and they have to be asked. They have to be asked. It's not complicated. I always say outreach and evangelism is not brain surgery. It's removing impediments and inviting people and making them feel welcome. But when they do come back, and they do come back, what we say and even what we don't say is really critical. It seems like someone always says something dumb, and it just ruins the feeling of coming back to church. Don't criticize, don't make jokes, don't lay on the guilt with a lot of you shoulds. Jokes hurt too, even though they're meant in good fun. Oh, I felt the church shake when you walk through the door. Whatever you want to say, please fill out a visitor card. These are people that are our members. They just haven't been around for a while. So hold off on the jokes, and just when people come back, they're coming home. They're coming home to their home parish. It's their parish too. It's their spiritual home. It's maybe where they were baptized or had the 40-day blessing or had their parents' funerals or whatever it is. It's their spiritual home. And they come for prayer. They come for comfort. They come for spiritual healing, maybe to mourn and maybe to celebrate, but they come. And you are leaders, and your leadership is a ministry. So we need to make those people feel welcome. We need to mentor them as they come back, provide comfort. And you know what the hardest part about coming back to church is? It's not walking into the liturgy. It's walking into the fellowship hall. They have no place to land. They have no person to sit with. And so it's easier just to leave than to just walk in and feel that feeling of not knowing anybody anymore or not knowing who to sit with or who to talk to. So we need to be there for them and to lead them. And to make them comfortable and to make sure. So just grab someone and say, be with that person, make sure they have coffee and someone to hang out with until they start to get reconnected. So you all have your own particular set of gifts, your skills, your training, your knowledge, your education, your experience, and that's all who you are. And God puts you in parish leadership at this time, at this place, in this, at this place and time for a reason. And that reason will only be apparent in hindsight someday as you look back on your years of service. I look back on my years as parish council president at St. Mary's. It wasn't easy. It was really hard. But I think because I was trying so hard to serve, I can look back and say my skill set for those 2 years was probably the skill set that was needed at that time. And then I turned over my keys and the next person took over and they took it to the next level. But you'll realize in hindsight that your skill set was the one that was needed at that time if it's not about you. And we'll talk about that later on. So a big part of leadership is empowering others to lead, knowing their skill set and encourage them to build on the work of those who served before them, applying their skills and their talents and their abilities. And this is critical when people come back to church. You can give them something to do right away and ask them to come back again because you appreciate their help. And they'll go home saying, I helped today. I got to go back and I got to help again. I felt like I belonged. When you give people something to do, you're reconnecting them to the ministry. So don't try to do everything yourself. And I found that if you find yourself saying, I have to do everything because nobody helps. I have to do everything because nobody does anything. You might want to flip that around and ask yourself, maybe nobody helps because I do everything. Because sometimes when those people that do everything and complain about it, when they actually aren't around anymore, 20 people rush in to do that work because they couldn't before. So we have to make sure that we're not working so hard and doing so many things that we're not letting other people in. It's a really critical part of leadership is to be inclusive and to delegate and not micromanage. Though it's hard for us, we're Greek, right? So a lot of us are Greek, and it's hard not to micromanage or give criticisms, but we have to let them do it their own way, within reason, and not micromanage them. So this mentoring is something that we should do all the time. Whenever we take on a leadership role, we should always think about who could take our place in that ministry when we're done, applying their set of gifts to that ministry and taking it to the next level, and be glad when they improve on what we did. I spent 14 years at a church on 54th Street in Manhattan. It was really fun. It was around the corner from Broadway and the Letterman Theater, and people would walk in just off the street and come to church. And we did a lot of improvements. But there's a young priest there now who's doing stuff that I never could have done. And he's taking it to new levels. He's just killing it. It's just so great to see young professionals. So we have to take joy in that people come in and they improve on what we did and build on that and take it to the next level. Myra, could you go to the next slide?
Yes.
So this is the Sunday that's ahead of us, the Sunday of the cross, and the hope that's greater than the darkest despair. And this is the third Sunday of Great Lent. We find ourselves, like I said, at the halfway mark in our journey. We're halfway there. This is the third Sunday, the Sunday of the Holy Cross. So why in the world would the church and her wisdom put the veneration of the cross at the halfway point of Great Lent? Cross is raised up before us to remind us of our spiritual goal of imitating Christ and taking up our own cross. As Jesus said in Sunday's gospel reading, and we say at every baptism, whoever desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Take up your cross and follow me means to get started on our journey to salvation. And if the road we're on doesn't have God's eternal kingdom as the destination, then we have to find a better road. The cross gives us the strength to continue the struggle. Seeing the cross ahead of us at this point, if we've been fasting and we are struggling in our weakness to be better Christians, as this spring training of Great Lent is for us, the church places the cross before us to see that and to have hope in the resurrection. And it gives us an incentive to persevere in that Lenten journey toward the resurrection. And then we talked about daffodils just earlier. Why do we surround the cross with daffodils? It's because daffodils represent the coming resurrection. They're the first flowers to come back to life in spring. So we surround the cross with daffodils representing resurrected life. As parish leaders, we get bogged down in the problems that inevitably occur in the most inopportune times during church. And we can get frustrated and crabby, a little angry, because it makes it hard for us to do our job when things go wrong. As a priest, I'm aware that people are always watching the expression on my face during liturgy. Do I scowl when a baby cries through my sermon that I labored over the night before? Do I get frustrated? Do I get impatient when an altar server turns the wrong way? Do I glare at the chanter when he goes on and on and on with his vocal gymnastics? Does it show on my face? As leaders, we set the tone for the joy in the celebration of liturgy. Any change in our expression, the rolling of the eyes or slight change in our face, really affects the people. And we need to set the tone, laughing off those frustrations and glitches that are thrown our way. There are demons, and they do come our way. And it's how we handle them is really important as leaders, to stay positive, to stay happy, to have joy in the liturgy. The priest I grew up with, Father Anthony Kordaris, of blessed memory, he was in the middle of a great sermon, one of many, and all the radiators around the church with steam heating, they started to clank like crazy right in the middle of his sermon. And he didn't miss a beat. He just smiled and said, "The demons are at it again." And he went on with his sermon. We have to acknowledge whatever's going on, but people watch our face and they want to know that we have peace in our hearts, that these things are not deal breakers. They're not going to stop us from enjoying the worship service and the fellowship that follows. We're glad to be in church, even in spite of all those little pinpricks along the way that kind of try to distract us from what we're trying to accomplish. So parish leaders, we need to all stay joyful and focused on that victory of that cross that lies ahead, despite all the frustrations and all the setbacks along the way. Myra, could you go to the next slide?
Yes.
I love this picture. The Father bringing the Son to Jesus saying, "I believe, help my unbelief." This is the fourth Sunday of Lent. Next Sunday is what we read from the Gospel of Mark. A father brings his epileptic son to Jesus in desperation because the disciples couldn't help him. And he says to Jesus, "If you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." And Jesus replies to the father's lack of faith, "If you believe, all things are possible to him who believes." And the Father's response is this prayer that we can say every day. He says, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." Faith is our trust in God. Faith is the trust that he watches over us and he has a plan for us. We read this in the book of Jeremiah. He says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you," says the Lord, "thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope." He has a plan for us. And living with the uncertainty of daily life requires a lot of faith. And we're stewards of that faith. Uncertainty sometimes brings on doubt. We all have doubt at all times. How is this possible? How could this be true? But doubt is not a lack of faith. Paul Tillich, the theologian, he wrote, "Doubt is not the opposite of faith. It's an element of faith." Faith is accompanied by struggle as we search for the truth, and doubt instills humility and it motivates us to learn more. So when we have those feelings of doubt, we need to hit the books or talk to people that can answer questions for us and recenter us on our faith. We're stewards of this faith. We're steward of the faith that in Jesus, and it calls us to do those things that protect and strengthen our faith. Stewardship isn't just about money. We're stewards of this great treasure of faith that we have and in our hearts. So Great Lent is this great opportunity to learn about our Orthodox Christian faith. And we should really try to edify ourselves by limiting those things that don't lift us up and doing those things that do lift us up. St. Peter talks to us as stewards of our faith. He says we should always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks us for a reason for the hope that is within us. We should always be ready to give a defense to anyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that is within you. Faith is not a big rule book of do's and don'ts. It's not about the rules. It's about loving and seeing Jesus Christ in the other. He told us we'd be judged not by how many metanias we do or all the rest of those things. He said we'd be judged by, "I was hungry and you fed me," remember? So seeing Jesus Christ in the other person. So stewardship of our faith calls us to do those things that reflect our faith to others, living our faith through our actions. Because Jesus said what? He said, "By this, all will know that you are my disciples, that you have love for one another." There's no better way of sharing the faith that lies within us than to see Christ in others and to love them and care for them. A great example is Mary, the Theotokos, the Mother of God, at the Annunciation, which we just celebrated. Archangel Gabriel comes to her, and our tradition and our hymnology holds that all creation awaited her response. They even say the rabbits sat with their ears upright, waiting to see what she said, because she had free will. She had a choice. She didn't have to do what the Archangel Gabriel was telling her was expected. So, but in faith and obedience to God's will, Mary replies to the angel, "Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord. Let it be according to your word." Let it be according to your word. Mary responds with faith to fulfill God's plan for the whole world. That's what we do in obedience to God. We say, whatever is your will, God, show it to me, lead me according to your plan. Especially in Great Lent, we're really trying to find our way back to the path if we've lost it, or improve our walk in faith, which we can always get better at. So stewardship is an act of faith. When we believe, stewardship follows. Stewardship is faith in action, and it's often motivated by humble gratitude for the blessings in our life. So stewardship and faith are not separate. Stewardship of faith is important, but stewardship of our gifts is also important. And when we are stewards of faith, stewardship of our financial gifts also follows, without almost thinking about it. And so St. John tells us, talking about faith, he says, all these things are written that you may believe. So the whole purpose of the gospel is not a history book. It's written that you may believe. So we have to be stewards of that faith and guard and protect our faith and know our gospel so that we can believe. Okay, Myra, I'm ready for the next slide. Okay, this one really hits home for all leaders of the church. Whoever would be great among you must be your servant. The gospel reading in the 5th Sunday of Great Lent, we get a great lesson in parish leadership and humility that's required to be a good leader. The reading from the Gospel of Mark about the two brothers, the apostles James and John, they came to Jesus privately and they asked to be given positions of honor in the kingdom. James and John asked to sit at the right hand and the left hand of Jesus Christ in his glory on the throne. But Jesus tells them how Christian leadership is nothing like worldly leadership. He says, whoever desires to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever of you desires to be first shall be the slave of all, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served. And then at the Last Supper, Jesus demonstrates his true leadership, his servant leadership, when he washes the feet of the disciples. I don't know if you've ever participated in this service and had your parish priest wash your feet, but you get a brief glimpse of what the disciples might have felt when Jesus took the towel and the bowl and began to wash their feet. Father Anthony Kordaris did this for me one time, and this is the priest who baptized me. I was his altar boy, and for many years he was, the person that led me to faith. That he washed my feet, and that was a real glimpse at what it must have been like for the disciples. But as parish leaders and as stewards of the various areas of responsibility in the church, we need to always remember that it's not about us. It's not about us. It's not about sitting at the head table or making speeches or carrying the epitaph or whatever it is that makes us look important in the church. We are always, always, always supposed to point to the person who gets the credit, which is Jesus Christ at all times. And I always remember the story, I'm sure you've heard it, about the donkey that Jesus rode into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday as the people were cheering for him. The donkey thought they were cheering for him. And we sometimes often think they're cheering for us when really they're cheering for the person we're serving, which is where we need to keep pointing, is to them and giving credit to God, to where it belongs, to giving him credit for all the things we accomplish that we couldn't do without him. And it's all because of his gifts. So it's easy to forget where the honor goes. Compliments and praise should always be deflected up to the one who deserves them. The cheering is not for us. I'm going to conclude now, Myra. We can go back to the gallery so we can all see each other. So just some final thoughts in conclusion. First of all, thanks for your time. Think about stewardship, and it's about the joy of giving freely, not just giving financially, but giving everything that we have, our skill sets, our talents, everything we have, giving freely. We avoid using language of judgment in the afterlife, of fear of judgment in the afterlife. And instead we talk about the concept of theosis, which puts the emphasis on experiencing heaven now. Stewardship is a practice that helps shape the world and ourselves in such a way that we can experience God's grace and love, communion now in the present. And this puts the emphasis more on stewardship being about what is possible for us as humans now rather than later. And it shifts the tone away from fear of being judged at the end of our life to the potential of experiencing joy now. So remind your members that they're not giving to the parish for any specific purpose. They're giving to God, and they're returning to God in thanksgiving for what he's already done for them. And God has never outdone his generosity. Whatever they can give, it's never as much as they've received from God. So we need to give sacrificially and gratefully. So in the weeks ahead, as parish leaders, we need to keep asking ourselves, if my parish were the only Orthodox church a person ever visited, or if I were the only Orthodox Christian a person ever met, would that person want to become Orthodox? We've got several weeks of Great Lent ahead of us, along with Holy Week at Pascha and the Resurrection, and we have endless opportunities to reach people that we only see a few times a year. I urge you, as leaders of your parish, and I encourage you to give all you can to this ministry. Give all the time you can give all the service you can give all the prayers you can give. Apply whatever gifts you have to this calling, because the work that lies ahead of you has eternal consequences. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was inspiring, but I'd like to have some discussion if you are all up for it, and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Father. It is extremely inspiring and very thought-provoking. It certainly made me stop and pause with the words of wisdom and the sensitivity around it. So if anyone would have a question, feel free.
Is everybody
Hi,
awake?
Father Jim. This is
Yeah.
Pete Nassis. So thank you for your words of wisdom and inspiration. About 2 weeks ago, you published Come and See. We got through the internet. Are you going to do something similar for every Sunday and expand on this? Because I think sharing your voices and your thoughts with many, many people, I'm actually going to take this and distribute it to our parish so they can see. Are you thinking about doing something similar for each of the weeks?
I don't always have material for everything that is good, and I don't always, my schedule is always permitted, but
Yeah.
that's what I try to do. When I have something that applies to the Sunday ahead, I try to get it to you.
Okay.
So if some of you are not on the e-list, the email list for the department, just go to stewardship.goarch.org. In the upper right-hand corner of the screen will be a place to sign up for the email list for both outreach. There's separate lists for outreach and for stewardship. So stewardship.goarch.org or outreach.goarch.org and sign up there, or just email me. I'm Father Jim K at goarch.org, FRJIMK@goarch.org. So whatever I can do to serve you. Thank you, Pete, for your feedback. We send those things out into the ether, and we hope they land somewhere where people put them to use, and we get some pretty good feedback. So I'm glad.
No, it was excellent. It was very, very good.
We also have a Facebook page where we are able to get things up really quickly. So if you could find us on Facebook and follow us there, you'll also see some memes you can use in your own social media at your parish or personally to share the faith with people in your sphere of influence.
Myra, can you get this video posted on the
Yes.
Metropolis website quickly so we can start sharing it with others within our parish so the message can be spread to everyone then? Yeah.
Absolutely. I will get it to Vasiliki tomorrow.
Thank
to
you.
the Metropolis, yes.
Father Jim, nice to see you.
Likewise, Nick, I just saw you there.
I know it's been a while, but I saw the invite and I says I wanted to pop on, but I think you mentioned something that really kind of hit home where we're talking about giving to God and not the parish. And I think I know even myself, sometimes we confuse that message a little bit there and how we reach out to the people there. And I don't know, maybe you have a few more thoughts to share on that, that approach or topic.
Well, you ready to go there? The tendency is to people think about what do I owe and what are the dues and what's my share. It doesn't hurt to tell people what it costs to run the church, because I think they'd have sticker price shock. They don't realize on a daily basis. There's this kind of a movement around the Archdiocese to divide the budget by 365 and tell people how much it costs. I think that's good. I think asking people to pay for a day or two, it starts to smell like dues. So you have to be really careful on how you do that, but it's becoming popular because it seems to work. And yet I really think it's sort of psychologically a step backwards as far as true stewardship. whereas people aren't giving freely. But there's that balance we have between reality check for the people. I mean, that dollar they put in the tray, I mean, when you go to the mall with $20, doesn't go very far.
No.
So you have to kind of give them a reality check every so often. So I understand the need to kind of give them that information. Another tool we've used to get people to think about their level of generosity is to have the parish council choose a level that's above the average and say, we're all going to commit to giving at this level. And then not you don't have to disclose your personal giving, but we're all going to give at least above this level. In my church, we said $1,000, and everybody who gives on the council gives a little more than that. And we said to the people, then we said, everyone on the council is committed to give at this level. Would you consider? So we're leading by example. I think I talked about leading by example. So it's a way without disclosing people's level of giving to encourage people to lead by example. I hope those strategies are helpful.
No, that makes good sense, and it's a good thought process too. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. It's great to see you.
Yes, you too.
So
Father Jim, it's Perry Ciatis. Thanks for your words. I actually joined a little bit late, so I'm sorry I missed the first part, but I'll catch it on the video. But I did notice throughout your talk, and I'm going to kind of plug our stewardship definition here in the Metropolis, that you used a lot of words that we have in our Metropolis definition of stewardship. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but it was really helpful in terms of sacrificial giving, in terms of putting our faith in action, and basically our response to God's gifts to us in terms of being a steward of those gifts and giving them back. I want to just emphasize for our team here in the Metropolis that we have this definition, and we should use it in our parishes, because I think sometimes we go by it very quick, we read it, but it is very meaningful, and I think it's very appropriate from your talk today to think about the way we define stewardship as being something more than just giving, but it's really putting, I like the faith in action. I like the sacrificial giving and being a steward of God's gifts to us. So I just wanted to recognize that, and thank you for those words.
Thanks, Perry. I think we're a lot on the same page in the materials we put together. Sorry for any plagiarism if there was. So thanks.
And Father Patra from 12 Holy Apostles in Duluth, this is a really small question. It's one of those kind of transition questions. So our priest, Father Dustin, and I, we agree we want people to give through stewardship. But there are some who are older who will say, oh, Father, are we going to have an envelope for Thanksgiving? Are we going to have a special envelope for Pascha? So this kind of envelope-driven giving, which is different than stewardship. So, I mean, we're trying to move everyone slowly away from that. But even as we do, people still complain, well, aren't we going to have an envelope for these things to drive giving? So I guess I'm wondering, we thought maybe we should just say, if you're a steward and you want to give an extra gift for Pascha, do so through your stewardship, as opposed to, do you know what I'm saying?
I do get you. And these paradigm shifts are so difficult for people sometimes, especially if they've been doing it all their life.
Yeah.
And it's just like wanting to give the priest a list of names, but if there's no money in there, the prayers aren't going to stick. They can't get past that. I already have the list. You don't even, but here's the money for the prayers. It's like you don't, but it's there, and you can't change that paradigm. So
Right.
I think sometimes we have to go to people where they are and allow for it while trying to kind of move, them in the direction, and maybe getting the next generations not to think in those terms. If they really want to give that way, I think, what we always say, well, if they want to give a gift, you take it, but so, but try to keep educating and keep pushing, in the rock up the hill to get the paradigm shift. So,
Okay.
This is Alexandria from St. Mary's, Minneapolis. How are you?
And well, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. So just one small thing that we've done at St. Mary's is, so Pascha and Christmas, we always have decorations. right? And we have a Christmas card, and then you can, for Easter, you can name your memorial of your family if you want for Pascha. So we still have 2 envelope times for Pascha and Christmas, and they're for decorations.
Got it.
So that seems to make the older people happy, and it's not a suggested donation, you know? So
Right.
some people give a lot of money, some people give a little money, some people don't give money at all. But it's a way, I think we sort of found, just to be able to, but it's not tied into stewardship in any way. So you're kind of helping with the decorations, but some people still use it, and we do not count it into people's stewardship. And I think everybody knows that. So just one little way to keep the envelopes, but to make them for something that's actually very useful, which are the decorations. So you don't have to take it out of the operating budget.
Thank
That's a
you,
great point.
Vanessa. That helps. Yeah.
Just one little
But-
suggestion.
Perfect.
I like your idea there, Cody. So I think what Patra might have been feeling is that feeling that we're always nickel and diming people to death. And we have to be really careful that they don't come to church with $100 in their pocket and they buy a wreath and a card and a chocolate cookies, and they end up with an empty pocket and they haven't even done their stewardship yet. So we have to, yes, allow them if they feel the need to give for certain things, and to allow those opportunities. But we really have to avoid the nickel and diming to death of giving. So it's a balance. It's all a balance. So
Oh, Owen?
Yes, Father, thank you for your words. I'm asking is there a special prayer or words of wisdom for leaders who are leading but need to lead from the rear? that the combination of being a leader but being humble and allowing others to be in front.
I don't know that prayer. I
how
think
do you
the prayer of Saint
accomplish-
Ephrem might be the best one at this point of year, is to, the prayer of Saint Ephrem. But there's a prayer that I'll send you. You can share with the group that I've used for starting meetings, and it really deals with all the things that we kind of run to during meetings. It was written many years ago by someone else, but it still applies. I'll send you a digital copy, and if you want to share it. So I usually open meetings with that prayer because it puts us in the frame of mind of being conciliar and patient and understanding, which isn't always our nature, right? So is that helpful?
Absolutely.
One other thing that what Petra was mentioning too, with the envelopes and things, I know we do a Christmas appeal, we do an Easter appeal, and then we have the festival and the raffle. And it's, when somebody's looking at their total giving, they're considering all these things, like you say here, we're going to be donating all this, but it's like that leap of faith to say, okay, well, we're not going to do the raffle, but please, consider, giving what you would be giving if you didn't have that. But it's a tough transition that we found to get from point A to point B with, oh my God, if we take the raffle away, we're not going to survive, and this and that. Yet obviously many parishes do.
It's like you can't go cold turkey. You know where you want to get to, but you have to educate the people and grow them into what your vision is, to not having to have all those different things. But it's a mentality. A lot of parishes, my parish I'm serving now, they wouldn't have been able to build their church if they didn't have their festival. And so it's in their DNA. And when I talk to them about, wouldn't it be great to have stewardship cover the budget, I might as well have two heads, because it just doesn't make sense. So you have to work through the process and also adjust yourself to the reality too. So it's hard.
What it is. But I think the messaging is so good. One of the good lines I heard is that, people, if you're crying poor in this, people don't buy deck chairs for the Titanic. I read somewhere, and I thought that was one of the best lines I saw, for not to have a negative message, right?
There's something in our handbook that says the sinking ship letters, because somebody sent me a sinking ship letter they were sending out. I thought, oh, please don't send it, but they did, Because people, that's why the Bill Chagano's quote came from, Father Bill, where he says
Yeah.
people give to vision, not to need. So, yeah. But it's tempting. It's tempting. You know, we need the air conditioner, the ceilings, all these different things. So
Yeah, Father Jim, I really enjoyed your theological foundation for stewardship. And I was going to ask you, have you written up what you discussed? It'd be very helpful to have a write-up of of your presentation. Is there
well, this was
anything
kind
that
of
you
a
could share with us?
compilation. John, it was kind of a compilation of things I've done and different things I've written because I was taking from different sources that I've written to create this format talking about Great Lent. So some of these things, like the Come and See, came from the 2010 campaign, which was Come and See, which I think Peter mentioned that. And so sometimes I'll draw from there or things we've written because you know, you don't reinvent the wheel every time. But this talk, as I was writing it, I thought it might make an article, but it's not in that format yet. It could be.
Okay.
You know.
Well,
Thank
I
you.
hope you can write it up and send it to us because I think it's very helpful to hear the theological foundations for stewardship. I think it's so important the way you integrated stewardship with basically witnessing and outreach, witnessing our faith. I think and the importance of including faith and trust and gratitude
Mhm.
for everything we have and our is from God. I think that's the foundation. And I was going to ask you, I'm trying to think of ways we can do this on a parish-wide basis at our church. And one of the avenues that's been talked a lot about in the last like 5-6 years is having like a visioning or let's say process in the parish. And I was just curious if you have any experience or examples of this being a helpful way to kind of do like a kickstart parish-wide to get people talking about stewardship, going through the visioning process. Like, what is our mission? What is our vision for our parish, for our church? And it ties it to our individual purposes that God has given us. Any thoughts about that?
There are a lot of people out now that are doing strategic planning. And I
Mhm.
think it's a good thing to do the thinking that you're talking about. On the other hand, I've talked to some people that did some really in-depth strategic planning, and the priest, a very thoughtful person, said, I see a lot of meetings going on, I see a lot of busyness, but I'm not sure what the end result is going to be.
Mhm.
So we have to be careful not to get so wrapped up in the process that we forget what the end result is supposed to be, which is to move us forward with vision. So I encourage you to look at, I don't do that myself, the strategic planning kind of stuff. But there are several people out there that are doing that or can guide you through that. Or maybe you just get your parish council off site for a day and have a retreat on, you know, because we're so busy when we have our meetings, you know, we
Right,
go through
sure.
the minutes, the budget, and then, you know, all the business items, the festival, whatever, and then we're done. And we forget to talk about where are we going? You know, we're so close to the spreadsheets that we're not really looking up to see where we're trying to get. And maybe stepping back, maybe having a dinner or going to a retreat center and just, you know, brainstorming on where you want to go. Could be a thing that could work. So there are a lot of ways to go at that, but we lose. The trouble is a lot of people don't think about being on the parish council until they're driving to church for the meeting, and then they drive away and they kind of don't think about it again. So there's all kinds of parish council members, and we have to try to develop it into a more of an ongoing process. So
Mhm.
I don't know, John, if that was
Okay.
helpful or not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just had one last quick question on time and talent cards and things like this, where, you know, we've collected some things, but we haven't really done a good job of doing a lot with them.
Mhm.
And, you know, I don't know if anybody has any suggestions or thoughts on what might be successful in trying to turn those, you know, offerings of help into some actionable things for us.
Yeah, that's a really neat point, and we have started again to issue time and talent catalogs that we distribute to each of the ministry heads. And just I think yesterday I sent to our stewardship chair. There were 7 people who listed stewardship interested in stewardship on the last update. So we're going to reach out to them and see if they can get involved on the committee. So,
So, John, you
it's
collect
important
them?
to use the information and to reach out to the people.
So you collect them and then you put them in a book and then or in a list and give them to your ministry leaders?
Yes.
Because Nick, I was going to say is if you collect the information and they volunteer and they don't get called, it's worse than not getting information at all. So,
Yes.
and
Yes.
we've all made that mistake. I made it
Yeah.
as a parish council president too, and I got the feedback, so I learned from my mistakes. Most of the things I know I learned from mistakes. So that was one of them. So.
We all do. Oh, thank you.
And at St. George, we had the same issue until we had one of our young people who is talented in the IT area. So whenever anyone becomes a steward online and the time and talent card is online and they check a box, it automatically sends an email to the person who signed up
Wow.
and the steward, the committee chair, introducing them to each other. They now have their information and it's their responsibility to move forward.
Wow.
Very
And the
organized.
chair's responsibility to reach out.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's great.
That's great.
I just want to extend before we end that I'm here for you. Whatever you guys need, whatever you need in your parish, don't hesitate to shoot an email off to me. Stewardship@goarch.org, outreach@goarch.org. Those will get forwarded to my personal email, and I'll get back to you. Because that's what I'm here for. The parish is my focus, and Melpo as well. She'll be meeting with you soon to make a presentation. But we're here for the parish. It's our whole focus. There's no other purpose for us. If we're not putting useful resources in your hands, then we're failing. So if I can help you, shoot me an email. If you're looking for some resource or an idea or have an issue that you're dealing with, let me know, and I'll be glad to get back to you.
Thank you so much, Father Jim. This has been absolutely wonderful. And if I can also ask you to lead us in the closing prayer.
Let's close with a short one because people are ready to go. Through the prayers of our Holy Fathers, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. God bless you all and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so very
Bye.
much. Our
Thank you,
next
Father.
meeting will be May 7th. Thank you. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Todo pasa.
Good evening, everyone.